closed.
I just wish we had popcorn.
It's just down the street. Penny?
As hinted at the conclusion of Daredevil Season 3, the first episode of Daredevil Born Again begins with Matt Murdock, Foggy Nelson, and Karen Page leaving their office to travel to Josie's pub for a drink and to say goodbye to Cherry, a retiring NYC police officer. Cherry complains that the emergence of vigilantes like Daredevil and White Tiger is rendering the police obsolete, while Foggy jokes with Christine McDuffie, an associate district attorney, about why he is operating out of a storefront with his buddies rather than a legitimate company. Foggy and McDuffie's talk turns to a burglar named Benny who has allegedly been charged with stealing a few bottles of Lafitte Rothschild from Red Hook, a bonded warehouse, a place where imported goods are kept without having to pay taxes. Foggy believes Benny will be found not guilty, but McDuffie doesn't share his opinion. When Benny phones Foggy to inform him that someone is trying to kill him, the initial humorous encounter becomes tense. Matt goes to help Benny when Foggy tells him that he is at his apartment, but it all turns out to be a deception to get Matt to distance himself from Foggy so Bullseye can kill him. By the time Matt doubles back, Foggy has already died in front of Josie's, which sets up a vicious altercation between Bullseye and Daredevil that culminates with Matt throwing Benjamin Poindexter off the bar's roof. Poindexter's strengthened spine allows him to live, but Matt knows he has gone beyond what he vowed never to do. He therefore discards his helmet, letting Cherry know who he is. As Matt heads to his workplace a year after that tragic event, the story of Daredevil Born Again advances. He has ceased his vigilante work. He partnered with McDuffie, who was already intending to work for a legitimate business following her time as an assistant district attorney, and the two appear to get along well. After hearing Matt's account of what happened that fateful night, the court convicts the homicidal supervillain to life in jail without the possibility of release. Matt then proceeds to Poindexter's hearing. Knowing that justice has been served and that Poindexter will be held accountable for his misdeeds causes Matt and Karen, who arrives at the 11th hour, to exhale with relief. However, it becomes clear that Matt and Karen haven't spoken since Foggy's passing when they eventually sit down to talk. As Matt dealt with the death of his friend, he abandoned Karen. Following that, Karen also abandoned Matt to cope with the death of her friend and the fact that, of all people, Matt was not responding to her. One of the helmet's horns, which now represent all Matt lost that night, is given to him by Karen as she departs from him once more. The encounter between Vanessa Mariana Fisk and the five families, the gangs that eventually control New York City, is attended by Wilson Fisk. Vanessa had stated in Daredevil 3 that she wanted to join Wilson's criminal world, but Wilson most likely didn't want her to get her hands dirty since he believed she was too innocent for this profession. Fisk left to mend his bond with Maya Lopez, his estranged adopted niece. Because of this, Vanessa took the throne and dealt with the gang leaders alone. Given that the goons almost instantly depart the premises after Wilson's dramatic entrance and without asking Vanessa's permission, it is evident that Wilson is still in charge even if he is on leave. Vanessa expresses her displeasure with Wilson's small power move rather loudly. Wilson raises the subject of going into politics and hiding his criminal history. Vanessa contends that she was the one who made the company resistant to attacks of any type while Wilson was away. Wilson expresses gratitude to her for doing so and suggests that they should maintain it that way so he may run for mayor of New York City. Matt receives the shock of his life when he finds out about this during a press briefing from Fisk. We see excerpts from the voice pop interviews of Bibi Urich, the niece of the journalist Ben Urich, who was assassinated by Fisk. In these interviews, New Yorkers discuss a variety of topics, including Fisk's choice to become mayor and the status of justice and crime. In the meantime, we see Fisk's handlers, Sheila Rivera, Buck Cashman, and Daniel Blake in his war room. They are debating how to guarantee Fisk's victory, with Blake wooing him to a level never before possible. Matt hears what the community has to say about Fisk maybe becoming mayor as he makes his way to a coffee shop appointment that McDuffie has lined up with a prospective consumer named Heather Glenn. He is astounded to learn that so many people are eager to cast ballots for him. This unfavorable attitude briefly permeates his encounter with Glenn, particularly after he finds out that McDuffie has tricked both of them into going on a date. Naturally, Matt regains his composure and strikes up a charming discussion with Glenn, who happens to be a therapist. Returning to his office, he gives McDuffie a light-hearted scolding before asking her for Glenn's number. Cherry is presently Matt's personal investigator, thus, even though he retired from the police force, he is still involved in solving crimes. Cherry hasn't discovered anything that isn't previously known to the public, and it appears that Matt assigned him the duty of researching Fisk's hidden agenda for seeking mayor candidacy. Since he has run out of options, Matt just agrees that the people of New York deserve him to be their mayor if that is their true desire. Cherry takes Matt up on his apparent newfound pessimism right away. Matt is unaffected by that as he only wants to perform his job and doesn't want to interact with Fisk ever again. Matt, however, can't help but meet Fisk after hearing he's keen to get rid NYC of vigilantes by any means necessary. They first met in Daredevil Season 3 when Matt dyed the walls crimson with Fisk's blood, informed him who he is, and advised him to avoid his pals. Their dinner talk is most likely meant to evoke the famous scene from Heat. However, it turns out to be a summary of everything the characters have done so far in this episode and in previous ones, with a few threats thrown in such as that Fisk would teach Matt a lesson if he disobeys, and that Matt will receive the same punishment from Fisk if he dons his costume once again. The only significant detail here is that Fisk tells Matt he had nothing to do with Foggy's death, which is obviously difficult to accept. When Matt returns after another date with Glenn at the conclusion of Daredevil Born Again Episode 1, he finds out that Fisk has been elected mayor. The scene switches to Fisk's workplace where everyone is rejoicing at the happy event. Vanessa is the only one who isn't publicly thrilled. Following Vanessa to the roof, Fisk and Vanessa have an unexpected discussion on Vanessa's adultery. Indeed, Vanessa not only handled the business while Fisk was away, but she also had an affair with a man named Adam. Vanessa is somewhat surprised that Fisk knows that, but she isn't totally astounded since, well, it's Fisk, he knows everything. Nevertheless, Vanessa reveals that she has affection for Adam by pleading with Fisk to spare his life right now. Fisk asserts that he has changed as a person. Since Fisk doesn't state clearly that he will not or won't murder Adam, that is meaningless though. Even if he had stated his intention with that individual, it would have been meaningless since it's like all other dishonest criminals worldwide, his deeds, not his empty words, are what matters. Matt returns to the street after leaving Glenn off at home to process the news that Fisk now controls the city. Indeed, he stated that the city needs someone like Fisk, but Matt isn't indifferent enough to ignore what happens to New York City. Matt is obligated to prevent the city from devolving into complete chaos, much like Fisk is obligated to do something shady in his role as mayor.
The 112th mayor of New York City.
Vanessa and I, we...
That is what I...
Party!
Hey,
House. Carter, Tammany Hall.
Right to the point.
And an expensive.
Allowing this type of totally inflammatory. Find the witness. This is about Hector IR.
Was it for the best for you, Vanessa?
from?
There were several surprises in Daredevil Born Again's first episode. Initially, Dexter killed Foggy. Karen left after his death and only came back for the trial. She offers Matt a piece of his shattered mask before leaving despite Matt's wishes for her to stay. Kirsten introduced Matt to a psychologist named Heather. The second episode of Daredevil Born Again opens on a spooky New Year's Eve when Wilson Fisk, the recent elected mayor, shows his constituents a video outlining his plans to usher in a new era of law and order in New York City, expelling vigilantes like Spider-Man, the Punisher, and Daredevil from the streets. While his visage fills the large displays in Times Square, supporters of the new politician can be seen celebrating while others appear exhausted and anxious. Like in episode 1, these feelings are carried over into the video snippets that are presented throughout the program. Many New Yorkers are fed up with criminals and vigilantes controlling their streets and are looking for a better alternative. Fans of the original show will find it distressing that they have opted to leave their safety to Fisk, demonstrating how much they no longer trust the heroes who are supposed to defend them. Nonetheless, there is some opposition to Fisk's rule. A series of meetings with municipal leaders and commissioners who all despise Fisk because of his years of criminal activities awaits him as he settles into his new mayoral desk. He takes a minute to rant about his violent and domineering father, who only revered previous mayor Fiorello LaGuardia in typical kingpin manner. His wife, Vanessa, who has not been perceived as supportive of his new status, and the city's new leaders, including the district attorney and police commissioner, need to put a unified front. Fisk is reminded by Sheila Rivera, a member of staff. A young journalist named Baby Urich tells the former criminal leader that he would lose control of the city if he loses control of the police, bringing this to his attention once more. Additionally, it is shown that BB is the niece of Ben Urich, a journalist who assisted in exposing Fisk's illegal actions in the first series and was ultimately assassinated by him. Although it's unknown what Baby Urich thinks of the new mayor, she is credited with the video clips of New Yorkers that are constantly displayed. Although intimidating, the new mayor appears unconcerned by these power conflicts, making an impressive appearance at a sinkhole on a nearby highway, where he orders workers to remedy the situation and addresses bystanders about resolving the city's issues. Those who have witnessed Fisk in action are not surprised by this demanding behavior. However, following a disagreement with Police Commissioner Gallo, his willingness to assist is soon put to tests. Gallo enrages the mayor by calling him kingpin and threatening to remove him from office. This appears to be Fisk's breaking point and the beginning of his return to his infamous old methods, the criminal gang life. Fisk slyly scares Gallo by displaying a photo of his illegitimate kid in Philadelphia when he comes to turn in his resignation letter. The mayor warns Gallo that he will not fulfill any requests, such as large class sizes or greater salaries, after making him stay in his current role. He also had fresh bruises on his knuckles, which were indicative of a recent altercation. The kingpin has returned. The episode concludes with Fisk and Vanessa attending marriage therapy. Murdoch's new love interest Heather Glenn, who we saw earlier in the episode attending a signing for her most recent book, is the therapist facilitating this conversation. Hector Ayala, portrayed by the late Kamal de la Los Reyes, is shown carrying flowers on his way to the subway more than 100 blocks north of the famous ball drop when he witnesses two guys tormenting someone. Ayala attempts to step in as a good Samaritan and engages the men in physical combat. Before one of the assailants falls into the tracks and is struck by an approaching train, the initial victim flees in the midst of the violent event. Ayala is then arrested for murdering a police officer when the other man identifies himself as a New York police officer. Hector reappears for viewers when Murdoch hears the police coerce Ayala into making a fake confession that he assaulted the guys on the metro without cause. Murdoch uses his unique hearing to determine that Ayala is both innocent and concealing something, and he chooses to go against his partner's desire by taking his case pro bono. With the court automatically refusing bail and scores of police officers stepping there to assist the prosecution, the arraignment is a fool's errand. Murdoch sends Cherry, a former police officer who is now a private investigator, to look into the case since he believes that finding the fugitive victim is the only way to win. Cherry discovers a chest with the ethereal amulet and recognizable white costume of the White Tiger, a legendary Marvel Comics vigilante, while speaking with Soledad, Hector Ayala's wife. Additionally, the camera swiftly moves over a picture of a little girl who comic book readers believe to be Ava Ayala, Hector's daughter and the amulet's future fighter. Naturally, Murdoch is upset at Ayala's seeming dishonest and pays him a visit in Rika's island prison to confront him about it. Someone has to protect the streets, the White Tiger says, rattling the former vigilante. Individuals are disappearing. Nobody seems to give a damn. It's not as if Daredevil still exists. As the season goes on, the vigilante dynamic, both past and present, will be intriguing. Murdoch manages to remove the vigilante activity from the record and prevent the prosecution from using it against Ayala, despite his continued annoyance with his client's gallant inclinations. Fans typically like seeing their favorite character in a courtroom, and this episode is no exception as Murdoch nearly silences the judge during the conversation. The lawyer later takes the inquiry into his own hands and follows one of the alleged dishonest police officers to the residence of Nick Torres, the subway victim, after having a lengthy conversation with Cherry about how personally this case affected him. He aids Torres in his escape, but at a price. Murdoch remains to divert their attention. As our hero struggles to overcome the deepest fears, the two police officers beat him to pulp for a few minutes. But once a pistol is drawn on him, everything turns topsy-turvy. In retaliation, Daredevil vanquishes the instigators. It was a complex battle sequence that rivaled some of the violence displayed by the Vigilante in the first few episodes of the original series. Murdoch screams as he attempts to regain control and quickly puts his broken spectacles back on as the program comes to a conclusion.
Mayor and Mrs. Fisk.
Where I'm from in Puerto Rico, it's the music of the island.
Oh. You want answers from me? I don't have them.
Let them kill each other.
Two for community service.
A black eye. I hope everything is okay.
I told you I don't know him.
Looking at the doors isn't gonna get them here. 18 months ago, I got pinched for being beat.
Before the trial, Murdoch pays Ayala a visit in his detention cell in the opening scene of episode 3. Reminiscent of his own land and culture, Ayala tells his lawyer about the curfew frogs on Puerto Rico's beaches. Murdoch assures him that he will hear the frog sounds once again because he believes that Ayala is the hero he could never be. Murdoch is shown gently cleaning his hands in the courthouse washroom while feeling the broken knuckles he sustained in his most recent altercation with the cops. The lawyer was on his way out when Powell, one of the offending cops, stopped him and threatened to retaliate. Unfazed, Murdoch reminds his rival that he can use witness manipulation to defeat him. Powell, a veteran cop with years of service, lies on the stand about what transpired on the train station and confesses to knowing Torres, a clandestine source. Turning to his colleague officer, one of the police officers in the gallery who shares Powell's Punisher tattoo, murmurs that Torres is unable to testify. The audience assumes that Cherry is transporting Torres to testify when she is seen driving a car close by. He nearly gets driven off the road many times before being stopped by Officer Powell, who is on a motorcycle. Thankfully, Murdoch had anticipated this and had his most crucial witness surreptitiously removed. But when Torres, who had been harassed by the police unit that had threatened him, makes up a narrative about being on the train station that night, things go south. This seriously jeopardizes Murdoch's defensive strategy. He puts Ayala on the stand and then non-consensually outs him as White Tiger in order to counter this. Murdoch and McDuffie's court approach dramatically shifts against the interest of their client. In their testimony, several White Tiger characters' witnesses described how the hero rescued them during their moment of need. They portray him as a man of ethics who rescued people because it was the appropriate thing to do, not for fame. Murdoch tells the jury during closing remarks that while the mask doesn't define the individual, it does demonstrate that he wouldn't assault a police officer out of the blue. However, the prosecution makes a striking claim that true heroes such as the police do not have to cover their faces. A guy called Devlin, who was present at the Five Families meeting in episode 1, hijacks a truck that is going to port over the East River in Red Hook, killing both of the drivers. The news reaches the dinner table of Mayor Fisk and his disguised wife Vanessa Fisk. Sheila Rivera is instructed by Fisk, who says is leaving his criminal operation, to let Police Commissioner Gallo know that the case should be his top priority. The former crime lord reaffirms his enthusiasm for his new profession by predicting that the order will ultimately triumph once the criminal groups split apart. Vanessa objects to this decision, telling her husband that his old colleagues will soon pursue him. The Kingpin continues to have a look in the past regardless of his title as the camera then zooms down to his injured knuckles. Two members of the Five Families are met by Buck, a member of Fisk's squad, beneath a freeway later in the episode to stop the internal conflicts. He pays the guys off. It turns out that Vanessa, who only wants to maintain harmony, ordered this payout rather than Fisk. The mayor genuinely feels that chaos must reign in order for him to emerge from the ashes, even if he appreciates her desire for a peaceful conclusion. When Vanessa brings up Adam, the guy it is believed she had a relationship with while her husband was gone, the atmosphere between the two is particularly unnerving. Future episodes should go more into this stark contrast in their relationship. Murdoch receives excellent news after sitting in the deserted courtroom with his broken devil horn. The cops are furious after the jury finds Ayala not guilty. In celebration, our hero without a mask invites Heather Glenn, his new love interest, to supper. He takes a drink in memory of his ex-partner, Foggy Nelson, and tells a sentimental anecdote about him. After hearing about the verdict on the news, Fisk insists on seeing journalist Bibi Urich once again. He claims in the interview that the court erred and that he believes Ayala to be a murderer. Viewers witness the White Tiger donning a patrol costume in defiance of Murdoch's advice that the outfit be retired, as he reiterates his distaste for vigilantes and their lack of heroism. A guy in a Punisher clothing shoots Ayala in the head minutes after he hits the streets. The mournful song of coy frogs on Puerto Rican beaches plays as the title rolls. This Daredevil Born Again episode receives an overall rating of about 9 out of 10. It was the greatest we have ever seen so far, and it's the ideal prelude to our favorite masked vigilantes comeback. Maybe 9 is a little bit too much, but it's my favorite so far. First of all, from the books of Suit LA to now Daredevil Born Again, the court material was incisive, riveting, and compelling. The majority of this episode takes place in the court, as we watch Hector Ayala's trial degenerate into chaos when Torres is unable to testify and must rely on the evidence of everyone White Tiger has protected in order to obtain a verdict. Even though Hector is found not guilty, things clearly go south from 0 to 100 real quick when Punisher murders him outright the moment he puts on the White Tiger uniform once more. In the meantime, Kingpin is essentially crippled in this episode and has nothing to do, and we don't see much of his business or illegal empire. He is so much busy with the office of the mayor. The conclusion does, however, give a clue that the upcoming episodes will get more intense. Let's proceed to episode 4.
About forgiveness, and I say that.
That's funny. Supermarket dumpsters.
That's something that the Bar Association's gonna take.
Place sometime soon.
I will find out which.
My father. lives and let their friend use them.
Not so good.
In Daredevil, Episode 4, it starts with Matt receiving information from the coroner about Hector's remains. But when Angela arrives, it's clear that she is devastated by the loss of her family. She believes that the cops are responsible, but Matt assures her that they will discover his killer. While Baby Ulrich is out having a good time, they are a little let down by Daniel's maturity and wants to limit their nightlife. However, he does talk candidly about Wilson Fisk, expressing his belief in Fisk's strategy to improve the city and circumvent unions. Fisk's design really goes so far as to demolish Red Hook Port and completely renovate it. He wants to get things going since he views it as a black eye on the city, but it's not that simple. There's a lot of paperwork and regulatory hurdles to get over. During this time, we transition to Vanessa and Fisk's captivating therapy session. With a focus on what she considers so alluring in Adam, Heather questions Vanessa about him. Fisk clearly finds it quite upsetting, but she defends it by saying that he abandoned her. They finally come full circle to the crucial question, will they stay together or part ways? They discuss this, and after the session, Heather asks Vanessa in private if she feels secure in the marriage since she thinks Fisk could be mistreating her. Vanessa tells her everything is good and grins. Matt arrives at the prison and signs up Leroy. His alleged theft of 5 cartons of Fido Fardo from a bodega has led to charges of petty larceny. He runs into Officer Powell in the court, but it's kind of a lost cause because the CCTV evidence already implicates him. He accuses the guy of killing Hector, but since his heartbeat doesn't increase, he appears to be telling the truth when he declines to engage in this line of inquiry. Leroy, on his part, is unhappy with the result and explains why he has been stealing. That doesn't alter the fact that he will spend some time in prison for breaching the law. Due to a little glitch caused by BB Ulrich's most recent piece labeling the mayor a union buster, the group has to postpone a meeting. While he makes the rounds, Daniel is to blame for discussing Fisk's most recent intentions with BB at the club. He admits up right away and apologizes extensively, which naturally infuriates Fisk. Fisk, however, lets him exist for a while longer because he is so open and doesn't bash his face in a vehicle window like he did to the Russians in episode 1. In another scene, Matt discovers the fragment of the bullet that killed White Tiger and, with the help of a skull emblem on the bullet's side, he ultimately links it up to Frank Castle. Yes, the Punisher is in town and Frank encourages Matt to fight back and face Foggy's murder because he knows that if he doesn't, it will consume him. Even while Punisher doesn't think Bullseye's existence in prison is fair, Matt naturally doesn't want to follow in his footsteps. Adam gets incarcerated by Fisk at the end of the episode.
You crossing the
Can be. Thankfully not.
Well,
He's dying.
stall as long as you can, okay? Ramondo Resolute.
Please.
Complex. But an Irishman.
Sir, my family's been banking here since I got off.
St. Patrick's Day marks the start of the episode. Matt Murdock is at New York Mutual Bank awaiting to be served. He can hear the everyday activities of every bank staff and client surrounding him because of his hypersensitive hearing. The producers hasn't held back from including a few little allusions and connections to the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe early on its run, including a mention of Skrulls. In the 5th episode, we meet Yusuf Khan, the father of Kamala Khan, also known as Miss Marvel, who is arguably its most important character to date. Apart from Charlie Cox, the only other actor identified as a recurring character in this episode is Mohan Kapoor, who reprises the role. The two immediately meet when Yusuf works at the New York Mutual Bank, where Matt Murdock is trying to obtain a loan. Unfortunately, Murdoch's McDuffie's company is having financial difficulties since he takes on people who aren't always able to pay, irrespective of whether they can afford it or not. Yusuf praises Matt for reminding him that New York needs individuals to watch out for others. The bank, however, is unable to provide him a loan because of it. Yusuf names his daughter Kamala and even makes reference to Jazzy City's own heroine, Miss Marvel, during their discussion about superheroes in New York. Then he displays a personalized Funko Pop of Miss Marvels to Matt, in addition to being a light-hearted preamble to an episode that rapidly escalates the stakes. The sequence alludes to another of MCU's numerous heroes. Matt hears a gang of armed robbers breaking into the bank as he is leaving on this St. Patrick's Day. They are hoping that the Irish people's good fortune would enable them to accomplish whatever they are trying to do in their robbery. However, when he comes back into the bank and is apprehended and placed with the other hostages, Matt intends to surprise them with an unusual kind of luck. Yusuf is obviously grateful to have him at his side, even though he is unsure of why he resurfaced. Furthermore, even if he is unaware of it, he will want his assistance. Yusuf had already informed us earlier in the episode that he will not be in until later in the day, but the chief robber, who is part of Vanessa Fisk's criminal dynasty, asks for the bank manager. Yusuf identifies himself as the assistant bank manager and offers to assist the shooter in opening the vault. When Matt discovers he's lying, he instructs him to hold back for an extended period of time. Detective Angie Kim takes charge of the operation and establishes contact with the main shooter as SWAT arrives on the scene. He just wants two certain kinds of armored cars and has no intention of making a deal because he is aware of how these hostages discussions operate. She informs him that in order to demonstrate his good faith, he must free two captives, but she is just as good as he is. He chooses Matt and a lady after agreeing, but Matt advises to free the woman's spouse instead. Despite his grudging agreement, the robber dislikes Matt because he dislikes attorneys. Matt informs the other criminal that he wants to use the restroom while one of them leads Yusuf back to the vault. He is escorted by another, and when Matt is left alone, he starts to fight back, which results in a battle on the stairs. In a particularly clever scene, he must pause the battle to pick up the gun, which nearly falls to the ground and would have unavoidably warned the other thieves before he vanquishes his opponent and descends to the vault. Throughout this time, Yusuf tries to delay, but the gunman becomes agitated and discovers his plans. Matt gets there just in time to assist Yusuf and bring down the thief. Matt puts on his Irish accent to reassure the ringleader that everything is under control as he radios down to them. The two starts trying to discover what's in the safety deposit box behind the vault that the gang is obviously interested in when it works. Of course, it is after Matt manages to access the vault, which is another accomplishment that pleases Yusuf. They discover that the thief has one of the keys required to unlock the safety deposit box. Matt opens box 407 when he learns that the police are going to break in. The man without fear returns to the bank's main hall, Yusuf by his side, and confronts the ringleader. As Matt tosses the diamond to his opponent, the police arrive, leaving the gunman with no choice. As the robber looks for the jewel and the police raid the premises, Matt helps defuse the situation by eliminating several of the other shooters. As he swiftly leaves the scene of the disturbance, posing as a police officer to avoid being arrested, he finds what he believes to be the diamond and gives it to a female captive who has apparently been cooperating with him all along. However, as we are now aware, Daredevil's escape is not going to be easy. To get the cops to assist in escorting the terrified blind guy out of the chaos and to safety, Matt puts on his greatest show. He then hunts down the main shooter while donning one of the thief's masks after attacking him with the broken beer bottle and finally subduing him by breaking his leg. A vicious altercation breaks out. The final sequence sort of transports us back to the start of the show. Sitting opposite one another at the New York Mutual Bank, Matt Murdoch and Yusuf Khan are precisely where they were at the time. Thinking back on the bizarre circumstances they were in the previous time they were together, Yusuf notes that even Matt's valiant effort would be sufficient to get a bank loan for his company. Surprisingly, he already knows that. Following the nightmare the two had endured together when the criminals held up the bank, Matt just wanted to make sure Yusuf was in good health. Yusuf tells him that he is praising Matt's courage and stating that he would have a good relationship with his daughter Kamala. He also extends an invitation to the Khan home for an exclusive meal with the family as a token of appreciation. Yusuf pledges to initiate the process and Matt gladly accepts the offer. But that's not the only delight waiting for him. After Matt leaves, Yusuf notices that the yellow diamond is in the bowl of candies on his workstation. In episode 5, after a brief diversion to the bank, we are back on the streets of New York where a victim has been discovered with its eye gouged out. In the meantime, a fresh mural that targets the mayor once more has surfaced on a neighboring building. Back in the apartments, we see Charlie Cox's character Matt Murdock reading scripture, clutching Foggy's Braille memorial card, and thinking back on some of the season's most significant events. Peter, Margarita Leviva, who enters as he is finishing, is shocked to hear that Murdock continues to pray. He claims that while he has slipped off, he's getting back on track. Sheila Rivera, Sabrina Guevara, is at the mayor's office at the moment, advising Mayor Fisk, Vincent D'Onofrio, on an event on his calendar. However, he instructs her to go in his place since he is sick of all these black tie parties. The leader of one of the 5 families, Luca, Patrick Money, is there as he enters his office after she informs him of an unexpected visitor. When the Kingpin gives him an ultimatum during their famous conversation, Luca tells him to solve it. Fisk informs him that he has 1 week to deliver or his time is up, and he raises the asking price from $1.8 million to $2.8 million. Luca takes it personal and walks away. Peter and Matt talk about the previous episode's event and Matt's feelings about being taken hostage, which he obviously doesn't mind for obvious reasons, but she's not sure why. She informs him that she is working on a book about vigilantes and the reason for their admiration. Thoughtful, Matt maintains his composure. Murdock chuckles as she begins to question him about his experience defending vigilantes and if he would think about setting up a rendezvous with someone like Frank Castle. She inquires about Daredevil as well, but he is cut off before he can respond. When we return to Fisk's office, he is visited by John Santini, a sanitation worker, who brings him some unfavorable news regarding the painting. When pushed to cut to the chase, he discloses that the mural is composed of human blood, which was a surprise that Wilson Fisk was not prepared for. While discussing a case with Kirsten, Nikki M. James, Matt's friend, Angela Del Toro, Carmela Rodriguez interrupts to speak with Mr. Murdock. When he inquires as to why she is not attending class, she responds that she is investigating the enigmatic case her uncle had been involved in before his annihilation. She wants Matt's assistance to look into it since she thinks it has something to do with the city's missing people cases. In essence, Matt advises her to leave everything to the police and encourages her to keep out of trouble because, as a lawyer, he can't do anything to help. Knowing that her uncle was slain by the police, Angela furiously rushes away, claiming that she believed Matt cared and that she will now have to handle things herself. Matt, dejected, watches. Mayor Fisk, Commissioner Gallo, played by Michael Gaston, dissects the case, speculating that the muralists may have over 50 victims. With a serial murderer of this kind on the street, Fisk decides to change the way New York is policed and loses consciousness for the remainder of the talk. 2 fangirls quickly become the villain's newest victims as they stumble across music when he is working on his most recent creation. Afterwards, we go to a party where Fisk discloses his encounter with Luke, Vanessa, Ayelet Zurar, who gives him tips on how to win over and dine with New York's elite. Tony Dalton's character, Jack Dusko, is also there and appears disapproving of Fisk's vigilante tactics. Before leaving, he gives a word of caution. Mark encounters Clark Johnson's protagonist character Cherry again at Murdoch and McDuffie, where she tells him about the serial killer causing havoc around the community. Matt is obviously eager to leave the site, but Cherry tells him to let it go and let the cops deal with it. The girls from earlier are shown in a fresh painting that directly criticizes the cops. Fisk takes advantage of this by putting together a well-chosen task team that includes every possible negative person. Gallo is shocked but unable to stop him, and Fisk meets with the police he has singled out, such as Sergeant Connors, Jeremy Hill, and Officer Powell, Hamish Alan Headley. In his starring address, he basically promises them complete control over the city, no official monitoring and directives to report, only to him. Muse captures Angela while she tries to explore the metro. Without any delay, he begins the procedure of drawing blood from her. In a panic, her aunt Soledad, played by Ashley Marie Ortiz, telephones Matt. After a minute, he hangs up the phone after dialing 911. Wilson Fisk visits Adam, Louis Taylor Porsche, once more when Murdoch is hunting down Muse. This time, he challenges him to a vicious duel in which he predictably wins. Adam is still alive after having been beaten unconscious. When Muse hears something in the subway, he is confronted by the bad guy himself, who gives him a quick hit to the forehead. After confirming that Angela is still alive and kicking, Daredevil lets loose his wrath on the infamous serial murderer, who proves to be a skilled combatant. They exchange blows, shedding copious amounts of blood, and as Daredevil is ready to kill him, he notices that Angela's pulse rate is decreasing. He rushes her to hospital, eventually succeeds in waking her, but Muse manages to get away. When Angela wakes up and sees him, Daredevil reassures her that everything will be well and confirms that indeed he is back.
Personas, or Matt, you left your brief to ruin everything good you have.
And it was a lot.
I wouldn't find out. You give me your word and then you...
In the 7th episode of Daredevil Born Again, Matt Murdock, alias Daredevil, and Mayor Fisk's anti-vigilante task force set out to eliminate a street artist and serial murderer named Muse. In Art for Art's Sake, psychotherapist Virtuoso Heather Glenn gets into a heated argument that transforms her theoretical interest in masked vigilantes into genuine hostility. Buck and Daniel learns at the start of the show that Angela has been telling others that she was saved from Muse in episode 6 by Daredevil. When they inform the mayor, the former Kingpin also trembles upon learning that his adversary has returned. He later lashes out at Buck, telling him how Daredevil ruined his criminal enterprise. However, before he takes direct action against Matt, he has to close some loose ends and maybe apprehend a criminal. The episode opens with our superhero Pitfall attempting to scrub away his wounds from the previous evening fight. Not even Heather Glenn's lavish seduction can lift his disposition. She is concerned about the trauma he is carrying and his potential tendency to self-harm, even if she does not know all the details of where his injuries came from. Cherry is a bit sharper since she knows Matt is Daredevil. He chastises Matt for using his vigilante movement to blow up his life. Kirsten McDuffie, Matt's legal partner, chastises Cherry later in the episode for obviously hiding things from her. But they are both out of fortune since Matt returns to Muse's dungeon to look for evidence on the killer artist's work. After speaking with Angela, Muse's days are numbered because of Daredevil's abilities, the AVTF's might, and the resources of the standard NYPD investigators. Bastian Cooper, the ostensibly bashful young man who, during her book signing in episode 2, asked Heather if she would accept him as a client. In this episode, we get a chance to see him at treatment. Bastian's aggressiveness is evident for Heather. However, it's incredibly interesting and unsettling how Art for Art's Sake alternates between Rivera telling Mayor Fisk about how Bastian killed his kickboxing teacher when the perpetrator was a teenager, and Bastian telling Heather about what happened in his own words. Then Bastian sketches his Muse mask on a notepad with his own bruised nose. For his next work of art, he restrains Heather and begins drawing her blood. In order to do this, the kid dons his Muse mask and demands that she cease referring to him as Bastian. It's intriguing material for Heather's planned book about projected personas that Bastian must adopt in order to commit murder. She just has to get through this first. If Muse weren't such a talented artist, Matt looks through Muse's sketches in the subterranean subway tunnel hideout and discovers some of Heather's drawings. By using his fingertips to trace Heather's face, he manages to identify it properly. He dashes over to Heather's workplace. He arrives just ahead of Fisk's police officer and challenges Muse's martial arts abilities. When villains take superhero spouses as leverage, TBH, it's a grating cliche that somewhat detracts from the allure of quoting superheroes regardless of their exemplary ethics. Neither Muse nor Heather are aware that Daredevil is actually Matt Murdock. Muse has other motivations. Something in him seems to have been triggered by Heather's first book. Heather opens fire on Muse, annihilating him after a nasty battle, saving herself. This will go horribly wrong when she finally discovers that Matt is Daredevil. While still in the outfit, Matt referred to her as Heather. However, Daredevil's involvement in eliminating Muse won't be revealed to the media. Fisk assigns the blame on the AVTF and capitalizes on Muse as a pretext to reveal his gang of henchmen to the public. Additionally, he has Daniel Blake pitch BB Urich an executive communications position. Vanessa and Luca meet at Red Hook at the conclusion of the show. She claims that because of his disregard for regulations, he is still liable. He claims that they require an adjustment and that he enjoyed following the protocol when she was in control rather than Fisk. He is not in agreement with Vanessa. She sends a message he'll be alone to Luca and an address that takes him to a restaurant where Fisk is dining at the final moments of the episode. He is not alone though. Buck emerges from the underworld diner and quickly executes Luca.
Enhanced supervision. All.
Where to God? Shut up!
I'm not going to answer that, Matt.
No, you.
Matt, come on.
Yes, desk.
The 8th episode of Daredevil Born Again begins once more with Bullseye, alias Poindexter, in handcuffs, having been transferred from isolation to the prison's general population. Regretfully, this does not sit well with the others who are waiting for him. Fisk, Red Hook Project, meanwhile, appears to be about to take off. He expresses gratitude to Vanessa for constructing throughout his absence and for all of his assistance. Additionally, Fisk is happy that she has chosen to work with him to eliminate Luca and maintain their control over the city. Heather is also having a hard time accepting that she annihilated Muse. She doesn't believe Matt when he tells her that Daredevil rescued her. Heather thinks Daredevil was just interested in his own safety and that she rescued herself. This chat is cut short by a tap on the front door as Buck arrives to visit the good doctor. When Matt learns that she is the therapist who has been treating Fisk, he is shocked. She has also received an invitation to a formal celebration of the Red Hook Project. However, Matt's requests are ignored and he grudgingly consents to Heather's request that he attend. Karsten breaks the news about Poindexter at work, but he prefers to speak with Matt. After talking to Cherry, Matt had a revelation in the pub. He understands that he knew he would prevail in his case against Dump Benny the night Foggy passed away. He was therefore silenced. Someone had plotted his death. When Fisk takes Vanessa to meet Adam, she witnesses him being confined in a cage, but Fisk can't help but cry as he tells them that he is executing this for these individuals. In any case, Kingpin swears never to abandon Vanessa when she murders Adam. Additionally, it appears like Fisk's task force is imposing its will throughout the city. Since their deployment, vigilante crime has decreased by 30%, even though the ACLU has filed several complaints over unnecessary violence. After all this, Fisk elevates Daniel Blake to the position of Deputy Mayor of Communications. Fisk gives him the responsibility of collaborating closely with the city council and influencing them in their favor. When Matt visits Bullseye at the jail, he demands to hear the truth. He is certain that Fisk paid him to murder Foggy and quiet him, but Bullseye won't say whether or not this is true. Bullseye escaped the prison once and for all, and he departs. The task force watches while the major formal event proceeds at this time. Matt also arrives and finds Kingpin, but before he can face the mayor, Heather steps in. She addresses Matt's aloof behavior, but he doesn't pay much attention because Kingpin is in the middle of a crucial meeting on the Red Hook project. In order to encourage the press to give him a great narrative, he has his task force push their weight about and threatens the city councilman into handing up additional fees. She queries Commissioner Gallo about the task force when she is cornered. However, he quickly absolves himself of culpability by claiming that Fisk is solely to blame and that he had nothing to do with it. He continues by mentioning Fisk as the primary culprit in the murder of Ben Urich. In order to do this, Bibi passes over her card and indicates that she plans to attempt to take Fisk down. But the task force is definitely keeping an eye on her. As the dance starts, Matt attempts to come up with a strategy to get them out of there after realizing that he and Heather are not safe anymore. But now that Bullseye has gotten out of jail, Matt understands that Vanessa was the one who had Foggy killed in the first place. Bullseye has a sharpshooter up on the roof in full view of everyone as he is forcing her to dance. No one notices him even though there are several armed guards circling the room. In an attempt to shield Heather, Matt actually takes a bullet for Fisk as the pistol goes off. Bullseye observes the carnage instead of firing again. Heather is standing over Matt as he hemorrhages out on the ground. Murdoch attempts to approach Fisk at the conclusion of Daredevil Born Again Episode 8 while posing as a participant in the ball dance, but he is thwarted by the large number of onlookers. Fisk whispers his insult at Murdoch because he knows he can hear them. Meanwhile, Cashman learns that Poindexter has gotten away and is heading to the ball. Vanessa becomes agitated when Cashman tells Fisk and Vanessa about this development, and it is then that Murdoch discovers that Vanessa, not Fisk, hired Poindexter to kill Foggy. In order to give himself the opportunity to question Vanessa, Murdoch quickly swaps partners, putting him dancing with Vanessa while Heather dances with Fisk. Vanessa promises to come clean about Murdoch. Murdoch threatens to disclose Vanessa's secret, and Fisk gives Heather some ambiguous hints regarding Murdoch's covert world. Poindexter has an opportunity to drop any one of them. He seizes his sniper weapon and targets Fisk as a result of all the back and forth between Murdoch, Vanessa, Heather, and Fisk. In a shocking twist of events, Murdoch risks his life to save Fisk from being shot as Poindexter fires the gun. When Murdoch is present, he will not allow anyone to be harmed.
Clyde, am I... He knows about this.
Self.
Attacking the mayor is
Earlier, about threats. This is still the mayor's office, not the king.
Power goes out.
It is confirmed at the beginning of episode 9 that Vanessa Fisk gave the order to kill Foggy and his client Benny. Additionally, she made arrangements for Bullseye's initial discharge from jail. In a flashback, Vanessa encounters Bullseye, also known as Benjamin Poindexter, who is drugged with antipsychotic drugs and imprisoned in a mental health facility. She employs him to murder Foggy Nelson, the attorney for Benjamin Gaffaro. Following the incidents at the gala, New York City continues to deteriorate. Fisk directs the anti-vigilante task force to pursue everyone wearing masks. In order to essentially black out the city, he also has his men turn off the electricity. in order to rid the city of vigilante groups like Daredevil and the Punisher, Kingpin and Mayor Wilson Fisk, Vincent D'Onofrio has gone to such an extent as to set up an official anti-vigilante task force. However, Fisk ordered his gang of renegade police officers to pursue the city's vigilantes after Bullseye, Wilson Bethel, a character played by Benjamin Dex Poindexter, broke out of jail and almost killed the former mafia kingpin at the first ball in support of Vanessa Fisk's Red Hook Pod project. Matt Murdock is shown in the episode recuperating from his bullet wound. He lived through his bid to protect the Kingpin's existence, but naturally, it didn't give his erstwhile adversary any reason to be emotional. Rather, Fisk used this as a chance to discreetly address the Daredevil issue, sending back to his hospital cubicle to attempt to assassinate him. However, Matt Murdock, the devil of Hell's Kitchen, is not present when Buck gets to his room. In his apartment, Frank Castle, also known as the Punisher, appears from nowhere to do Karen Page a favor, and so cannot allow Matt to perish, and he emerges from the background. As soon as Frank discovers that one of the task force rounds bears the same Punisher insignia as the one that killed Hector Ayala, the two determine that the attacker was none other than Sergeant Cole North. Daredevil is inclined to murder him, as the Punisher compels Daredevil to. After Frank assaults another cop, Daredevil lashes out at him and the two start arguing. Following the discovery that a grenade has been thrown into the flat, Matt seizes Frank and the two of them leap from the building as it detonates. When the two touches down on the earth below, an automobile approaches them. Karen Page exits and instructs them to enter. Karen then tends to Matt's wound as Frank stitches himself. She explains that after learning about Bullseye's prison break, she immediately boarded a trip back to New York and phoned Frank to seek his assistance. Then Matt discloses that Vanessa was the one who gave the order to kill Foggy. Sheila betrays Gallo, who is frightened. He is brought to Red Hook, where Kingpin tears apart his jaw and topmost part of his head in the most gruesome way imaginable in front of all parties and television. Matt and Karen are prepared to take over the Red Hook. However, Karen calms him down by saying that they would also require an army because he cannot defeat a whole army by himself. When the electricity is restored into the city, Fisk speaks with Heather in a soprano-style therapy session and tells her that he wants her to take over as the city's new commissioner of mental health. In a triumphal speech, Fisk declares martial law in New York City, a curfew of 8 p.m., nothing less, and a ban on vigilantes as part of the Safer Streets initiative. The task force undoubtedly capitalizes on the explosive but essentially non-violent protests that are taking place outside. When the Punisher hears the radio discussion, he invariably becomes involved as well and starts methodically eliminating the task force members. Regrettably, he is quickly overwhelmed and captured. Powell stands in front of the task force jury, all of whom are tied up and wearing the Punisher symbol, as Frank attacks them all, calling them morons and a parody. Fisk had his way with Gallo speaking about removing players from the game. He ensures that the other members of the task force remains in line by popping his head like a grape, as we saw earlier. Daredevil and Karen discuss how to deal with Red Hook, but it appears that this is a difficult undertaking at this time. But Matt wants to retake the city, and building an army is the first step towards that goal. Matt tries to recruit as many people as he can to join his revolt in order to liberate the city from Kingpin, while Kingpin tries to put everyone who opposes him under surveillance, including Frank Castle, already locked up in a cage. In the mid-credit sequence, Punisher engages the guard in a conversation and persuades him to extend his hand and shake hands. The Punisher breaks his arm and blasts his way out. Seeing Matt get shot for Fisk made those chances much more difficult since it indicates he wasn't in his prime physically. Still, Episode 9 gives viewers something unique with the brawl that includes both the Punisher and Daredevil. Both of the vigilantes exhibit extreme violence, which is quite appropriate. Even with a wound, Daredevil never lets up and shows up amazing fighting and athletic abilities against armed law enforcement. Much depends on Daredevil Born Again's Season 1 conclusion, as Season 2 has already been approved and is in development. In the long run, this episode must establish the tone for Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox and Wilson Fisk, Vincent D'Onofrio, as well as Frank's future, but the greatest reconciliation is between Matt and Frank Castle, because it is a moment that fans of the original TV series have been yearning for, to see the two heroes battle side by side.